Hello friends, welcome back to our YouTube channel Doctor's Corner. Today we are going to discuss one of the very important topic in nervous system, that is basal ganglia. Okay, so one of the disorder related to basal ganglia is Parkinson's disease. Okay, so we are going to discuss about the Parkinson's disease separately in a next lecture, but today we are going to discuss about the anatomy and physiology of basal ganglia. Okay, so first of all, what is basal ganglia? So basal ganglia is basically, it is a collection of nuclei, that is masses of the gray matter, which is present in the forebrain and the upper part of the brainstem. Okay, so where exactly it is, to understand as, let me draw a line diagram of central nervous system. Okay, so I'm just drawing a line diagram of the central nervous system. So consider this as the forebrain, it is the cerebrum. Okay, then at the base there is the brainstem, that is the midbrain, pons and medulla. Midbrain, pons and medulla, this will continuous as spinal cord. Okay, so what is this? This is midbrain, then this is pons, this is medulla, then again around this brainstem there is cerebellum. Okay, so this is the basics line diagram of the central nervous system. Okay, in coronal section. Now consider this as the midline. So in the midline here, on either side of the midline at the base of the forebrain, here just near this, there is one mass of the gray matter, that is a nuclei. I hope you understand what do you mean by nucleus and ganglion. So nucleus is nothing but the collection of the neuronal cell body inside the central nervous system, whereas ganglion is same, that is collection of the neuronal cell bodies outside the central nervous system, that is in the peripheral nervous system. Okay, so thalamus, again it's a nuclei. So on the either side of the third ventricle, so there is thalamus. Okay, so this is motor cortex. Oh sorry, this is the cerebral cortex. In that we have here motor area, that is the motor cortex. So this is again gray matter, this cortex is made up of gray matter. That is again here there will be collection of the neuronal cell bodies. So the gray matter is consist of this cerebral cortex as well as the nuclei. For the proper understanding of this, you can refer to my previous video on introduction of nervous system to understand this important and what exactly there is gray matter, what is white matter, what are nerves, what are tracts, what are nuclei, what are ganglion. Okay, so okay, come back here. So this is thalamus. Now just lateral to the thalamus there is a mass of the gray matter, okay, which is appear like a lens. That's why the name given is lenticular nucleus. Lenticular nucleus. Okay, lenticular nucleus. And in between this thalamus and this lenticular nucleus there are axonal fibers, that is the neuronal connections, that is the axons. One group or bundle of the axons will be running either from upside to downwards or from downwards to upside. So this bundle of axons which is running here in between this thalamus and this lenticular nucleus, the term given here is internal capsule. Remember, this thing is internal capsule. So it is one of the commonest site, internal capsule. It is one of the commonest site of injury and it will lead to hemiplegia and all. However, it is not concerned to our topic today. Our topic is again basal ganglia. So here this is lenticular nucleus, and above this again there is one more structure here. This is known as caudate nucleus. Actually it is a C-shaped structure, but on coronal section it will appear like this. So it is a C-shaped structure and it will crosses like this, and at the end of this C-shaped structure of the caudate nucleus there is one more mass of a gray matter known as amygdaloid body. Okay, so this is caudate nucleus, lenticular nucleus. Then just below this thalamus, or there is one more mass of the gray matter, this mass of the gray matter, it is known as subthalamic nuclei. Subthalamic nuclei. Okay, so this all this structure is present at the base of the brain, that is base of the forebrain. That's why the name given is basal. Okay, however, the term ganglia is a misnomer. To be technically speaking, it is nuclei, basal nuclei. Okay, it's a misnomer. So it is a basal nuclei because these are present at the base of the forebrain. Okay, now in the midbrain, again there is a mass of a gray matter in the upper part. So this is called as substantia nigra. Okay, this is substantia nigra. This is subthalamic nuclei, this is lenticular nucleus, and this is caudate nucleus. Okay, so I'll write this structure once again, or I'll write the names, what does it consist of once again, so that the point will be more clear. See, this is caudate nucleus. Caudate nucleus. Caudate nucleus. Then you have lenticular nucleus. You have lenticular nucleus. Now this lenticular nucleus is divided into two parts. The medial one, it is known as globus pallidus, and the lateral one, it is known as putamen. Okay, so this one, this lenticular nucleus is divided into two parts, putamen and globus pallidus. Putamen and globus pallidus. Okay, then the third nuclei what we have studied is, so we'll write this putamen as a second and globus pallidus as third, and fourth one is the subthalamic nuclei. Okay, so this one is this, and this is subthalamic nuclei. Subthalamic nuclei. Subthalamic nucleus. Okay, and finally in the midbrain, that is in the brainstem, upper part of the brainstem, we get one more mass of a gray matter, that is known as substantia nigra. Substantia nigra. Okay, now with this five group of nuclei together, they are termed as basal ganglia. Let me repeat once again, this five group of nucleus, that is caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus, subthalamic nucleus and substantia nigra, together if we consider this five group of nuclei, five group of gray matter, okay, that will be five group of this nuclei will be present, one group will present on the right side and one group on the left side. That is basically we have two, that is on right side and left side. Okay, so this group of nuclei together, it consists of basal ganglia. So basal ganglia consists of caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus, subthalamic nucleus and substantia nigra. Okay, now here again I would like to add few terms so that the discussion it will be more clear. So just remember this thing at the base of the brain, it is in the forebrain, what structures are there? Caudate nucleus, lenticular nucleus, it includes putamen and globus pallidus and subthalamic nucleus, right? So these structures are present in the forebrain. So in the forebrain, so this structure like caudate nucleus and lenticular nucleus, they are derived from telencephalon, whereas this structure subthalamic, that is a part of diencephalon, and this one which is substantia nigra, the only nuclei which is present in the brainstem in this basal ganglia. So this substantia nigra, it is derived from mesencephalon. Okay, now we have to remember few terms. One is corpus striatum. Corpus striatum. So corpus striatum means caudate nucleus plus lenticular nucleus. if we consider these two nuclei together, chordate nucleus and this lenticular nucleus, this together two group of nuclei, chordate plus lentiform nucleus, they are termed as corpus striatum. Okay, so it includes chordate nucleus, putamen and globus pallidus. Okay, now this corpus striatum is further divided into neostratum and paleostratum. So the neostratum means chordate nucleus plus putamen. Chordate nucleus plus putamen means neostratum, or simply if we use the term striatum means neostratum, that is chordate nucleus and putamen. However, this one globus pallidus, it is called as paleostratum. Okay, in general, in our discussion, whenever we use the term striatum, it means neostratum, that is chordate nucleus plus putamen. Okay, now this globus pallidus, which is the paleostratum, it is further divided into globus pallidus externus and globus pallidus internus. Okay, so this globus pallidus is further divided into globus pallidus externus and the internal part is globus pallidus internus, this nuclei of globus pallidus. Okay, now then we have subthalamic nuclei, and this one substantia nigra is further divided into two parts, pars compacta, substantia nigra, pars compacta and pars reticularis. Okay, pars compacta and pars reticularis. Hope this important anatomical concepts is clear to you people. The location of the nuclei of the basal ganglia and what does it consist of? Chordate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus, subthalamic nucleus and substantia nigra. Okay, so I hope this concept is clear. Now, what is the function of this basal ganglia? Okay, so basal ganglia is mainly involved in maintaining the voluntary motor activity. That is, its main function is to help in voluntary motor activity. Voluntary motor activity means this one, motor activity, I am raising my hands. Okay, now I am walking. All these voluntary activities are controlled by this basal ganglia. But remember, it's not only the basal ganglia, but the cerebral cortex here, more specifically the motor cortex, which includes primary motor area, supplementary motor area and premotor area, even the somatosensory area. So that part of the brain also controls the voluntary motor activity and also the cerebellum. So these three structures mainly helps in controlling the motor voluntary movements. Okay, which one? Motor cortex, that is the part of the cerebral cortex, then basal ganglia, this 5 group of nuclei, and the cerebellum. However, we'll discuss about the cerebellum and the motor cortex in the next or the other videos. So time being, we'll concentrate on the basal ganglia. Now, how exactly this basal ganglia will help in maintaining the voluntary movements? Okay, so I'll just draw one more diagram to get a rough idea how exactly this basal ganglia help in maintaining the voluntary movements or the motor activity. Okay, so again I'll draw a lateral section. Okay, lateral section of the central nervous system, that is the brain, here brain stem and spinal cord. Okay, lateral section. Okay, now this is the central sulcus. So here in this motor, this one cerebral cortex, we have somatosensory area, then we have the primary motor area, then we have the premotor area and supplementary motor area. Okay, supplementary motor area and premotor area. So this actually basically, so this motor cortex will send the impulse, send the signal to the muscles. How exactly? If you remember, with the help of the pyramidal tracts or the descending tracts are also known as corticospinal tract. So these are the upper motor neuron. So this bundle of the nerve fibers or axons will descend down, and at the level of the medulla they will decussate to the opposite side and goes to the concerned spinal cord. So these are known as upper motor neurons, and from this the signal goes to the lower motor neuron. Okay, so this one is the lower motor neuron that will ultimately supply the muscle. Okay, so this lower motor neuron are the neurons which are present in the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord, which take origin from the anterior horn cells of the spinal cord and also from the cranial nerve nuclei of the brainstem. We have discussed what is upper motor neuron, what is lower motor neuron in my previous video. Those who want clarification, you can just go back and see in our channel Doctor's Corner regarding this, what is upper motor neuron, what is lower motor neuron, and what is the lesions of that. Okay, so generally the motor activity, suppose I want to raise my hand, so basically this is the main pathway, that is from your motor cortex, the descending tracts, or along with that other extrapyramidal and pyramidal tracts, they send the impulses to the concerned muscle of the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord, lower motor neuron will go to the muscle and a voluntary activity, contraction and relaxation takes place. Okay, now what is the role of this basal ganglia now, if it is mainly controlled by the this one motor cortex? So remember how what is the exact role is, I'll just let you know. See, any motor activity, first there will be the thought process. So this thought process first originates in the prefrontal cortex. Okay, suppose if I want to do any motor activity, okay, so this motor activity I want to raise my hand, so this first thing will, the thought process will be there that I want to raise my right hand now. Okay, not the left hand, only right hand now. So the first will be the thought process. See, thought process will start in the forebrain, and from this forebrain the signal will go to the, from this forebrain the signal, that is the thought process, the signal, the thought of doing the motor activity goes to the motor cortex, that is the primary motor area, supplementary motor area, and the premotor area. Okay, also this part of the somatosensory area. Now this motor cortex will send the impulse or send this signal to basal ganglia. Okay, consider this as the basal ganglia, this red color thing. So this basal ganglia is nothing but this group of nuclei. So from this motor cortex, basal ganglia will receive this, okay, impulses, and from this basal ganglia, the basal ganglia will do planning and programming of the movements and helps in initiation of the movement, send the motor command via thalamus back to the motor cortex. Again then motor cortex will send through the this one upper motor neuron, and then to the lower motor neuron, and finally to the target muscle, and the motor activity is achieved. Okay, hope you understand this circuit. That is, from the prefrontal cortex the idea originates, and the idea will go to the this one motor cortex. Okay, then from this motor cortex we send the signal to the basal ganglia, and again all this planning and programming, that is timing and scaling of intensity, how much suppose I gave an example of raising my hand, so how much I should raise it, how fast I should raise it. Okay, all this planning will be done, initiation movements and when to stop and how to modulate the movements. So this motor movements we'll discuss in the functions also, what exactly basal ganglia will do. So this, from this basal ganglia the motor command is given back to the thalamus, and again from the thalamus it will go to the primary motor area, and from this primary motor area, that is from the descending tract, that is most commonly corticospinal tract, up to the target muscles. Okay, hope you got a general idea of the basal ganglia. Now we'll discuss what are the connections, of the basal ganglia, and how they are, and functions of the basal ganglia. Okay, so in the university examinations several times these questions will be asked in the theory exams. Describe the connections and functions of the basal ganglia, and add a note on Parkinson's disease, that is the one of the commonest disorder related to this basal ganglia. We'll discuss about that, all that things one by one. Okay, so hope the concept is clear. What do you mean by basal ganglia? Now we'll discuss about the connections. Okay, so I'll just erase this thing so that we can discuss about the connections, how exactly from this motor cortex this basal ganglia are connected to each other, and also to this motor cortex. Okay, and remember, in the next video we are going to discuss about very important thing, Parkinson's disease, that is part 2 of the basal ganglia. So in this Parkinson's disease, what is the main cause, in between also connections, I'll let you know a few of the symptoms of tremors, hypokinesia, rigidity in Parkinson's disease, how exactly it will happen. So if time permits, I'll discuss about that also. So just concentrate here. Now we are going to discuss about the connections of the basal ganglia. Okay. Now these connections of the basal ganglia we divide into two headings. One is direct pathway and another one is indirect pathway. However, one more is nigrostriatal pathway, but first we'll discuss direct and indirect pathway. Okay. First, direct pathway. So what is this direct pathway? So direct pathway is responsible for this motor activity. So again, we have to discuss this with the help of one diagram. Now consider this as the cerebral cortex. Okay. So what is this? Cerebral cortex or motor cortex or cerebral cortex. Okay. Then what does basal ganglia consist of? If you remember, caudate nucleus, then lenticular nucleus, which includes putamen, this is putamen, and globus pallidus. Globus pallidus further divided into globus pallidus externus and globus pallidus internus. Okay. Again, we have here thalamus. Few people even consider thalamus as a part of the basal ganglia, but strictly speaking, and also red nucleus also a part of a basal ganglia. Okay, however, they are closely associated, but theoretically we consider only this 5 nuclei as the basal ganglia. Now this is thalamus. Then here we have subthalamic nuclei. Here we have subthalamic nucleus. Okay. We have subthalamic nucleus, and this is globus pallidus, this is putamen, this is caudate nucleus. Again we have substantia nigra in the midbrain. Again it has two parts, pars compacta and pars reticularis. Okay, so this is substantia nigra, this is subthalamic nuclei, this is thalamus, this is putamen, globus pallidus and caudate nucleus. Okay, we are also giving the PDF notes of this lecture, so even if you miss something, we are giving it in the notes, so please concentrate here so that the concept will be more clear to you people. So basically what happens now, so how this motor cortex or cerebral cortex is connected to these parts of the basal ganglia via the direct pathway. Okay, so first thing is, a bundle of the nerve fibers or the fibers or a pathway starts from the cortex and it will terminate into the striatum. Now what is striatum? We have already discussed just few minutes back. So striatum means caudate nucleus and putamen, that is neostriatum. Okay, if we say corpus striatum, it means caudate nucleus and this lenticular nucleus as a whole. Now this will come and give connections to the striatum, that is caudate nucleus and putamen. Now this bundle of the neurons have the neurotransmitter glutamate, which is an excitatory neurotransmitter glutamate. Okay, now from here again the bundle of the nerve fibers or the pathways or the projection, that is, this is corticostriate projections or corticostriate pathway. Then from the striatum, striatopallidal fibers or striatopallidal projections or striatopallidal pathways. So it will, this group of fibers will originate from the striatum, that is caudate nucleus and putamen, and terminate in the globus pallidus internus. Remember, globus pallidus internus here rather than externus in the direct pathway. Now the neurotransmitter here is GABA in this pathway or projections. Again from this globus pallidus internus, the connections go to the thalamus, that is more specifically ventero-anterior and venterolateral nucleus of the thalamus. Again these are GABAergic neurons, that is the neurotransmitter which are released at the nerve terminals is GABA. Again from this thalamus, that is ventero-anterior and venterolateral nucleus of the thalamus, that is the thalamocortical fibers or thalamocortical projections, it will go back to the cortex, and this is again glutaminergic fibers, that is the neurotransmitter release here is glutamate. Here GABA and substance P, to be more specific, GABA and substance P, GABA and substance P, here this fibers, striatopallidal fiber, substance P. Okay, now so you can see how the motor cortex is connected to the different nuclei of the basal ganglia. It is caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus, and also to the and via thalamus the information goes to the glutamate. Just now we have discussed here that how there is a connection between the motor cortex and the basal ganglia. So this is how the direct pathway, that is from the cerebral cortex it will go to the basal ganglia to thalamus, and the information goes back to the motor cortex, and from here the descending tracts will go again after when this basal ganglia send the feedback or input to the cerebral cortex regarding the movement. We'll discuss in the functions. Then that input is finally gone through the cerebral cortex to the descending tracts and finally to the lower motor neurons and the muscles. Okay, now here how exactly these neurotransmitters help in transmission in the direct pathway. So as you know, the motor signal which originates in the cerebral cortex, which goes from corticostriate projections here, the action potential here is more. Okay, so the signal here gone is more. Okay, so whenever there is a planning of motor activity, the signal from this will go to the basal ganglia. So the signal here, that is the activity in these neurons, will be more, and when the activity in these neurons will be more, so the neurotransmitter release is glutamate here. Okay, so the glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter, so again it will increases the action potential here in these neurons, that is from the striatopallidal pathway. So it will be increased. Again here this is GABAergic neurons, that is the neurotransmitter release is GABA. So here when there is more amount of the GABA is released, then definitely, as you know, GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. It will causes the inhibition of these signals here, it is the action potential is decreased by causing hyperpolarization. Now if you like to know how exactly this GABA will causes the inhibition if the postsynaptic neurons is, so I'll just briefly tell because time won't permit me to tell the same. So consider this as the postsynaptic neuron. Here there are GABA receptors. So these GABA receptors are coupled with the ion channels. So mainly chloride and the potassium ion channels will be there. So whenever GABA will bind to this GABA receptors on the postsynaptic neurons, there is opening of the chloride channels, okay, and the potassium channels. So chloride will enter here and potassium will go outside. So ultimately what happens is there is increase in the negative charge here inside, so it is hyperpolarization. If you remember, the resting membrane potential of a neuron is around minus 90 millivolt, so it will cause us more negative, that is hyperpolarization. To get an action potential it should reach to around plus 20 or like that, that is depolarization, then again repolarization, it will cause us hyperpolarization. That's why it will cause us inhibition. Okay, so just briefly I have told the mechanism of inhibition here postsynaptic. So it will really, the discharge will be less here in this pathway, that is the pallidothalamic pathway. Now when the discharge is less here, then the neurotransmitter here is again GABA. So less amount of the GABA, which is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, is released here. When the less amount of the GABA is released here, then what happen here is, this is actually in inhibitory control, then there will be increased discharge. There will be an increased discharge. So the information reaches the cortex. So this is an excitatory pathway. Direct pathway is an excitatory pathway. Okay, direct pathway is an excitatory pathway. Now I'll discuss the indirect pathway. So again I'll draw here only so that you can understand more clearly the indirect pathway. So that was the direct pathway. I am going to draw here itself what is how an indirect pathway works. Indirect pathway. indirect pathway. So again indirect pathway, the same, the signal from the motor cortex goes to the striatum, that is corticostriatal fiber. So don't worry if you are not able to draw this diagram, we are already giving a PDF along with that. You can check it out in our Telegram link, which is provided in the description of our YouTube channel Doctor's Corner. So please subscribe and go to the description, and you can just check out the Telegram link where you can get the PDF of this today's lecture, where we have given a beautiful diagram of the direct indirect pathway, also the nigrostriatal pathway, and also the various locations of the basal ganglia. Anyway, come to this indirect pathway. Now what I am drawing here, the same thing, first thing will be the same. The neurotransmitter here is glutamate. Now from here, second pathway, again it is a GABAergic neurons, but what happen is this will end in the globus pallidus externus rather than internus. Okay, in the direct pathway here, from the that is from this putamen and caudate nucleus, it is going to globus pallidus internus. Now it is going to the globus pallidus externus. Again from here, inhibitory neurotransmitters neuron, that is pallidosubthalamic nucleus, it will go to the pallidosubthalamic pathway. Now from this pallidosubthalamic pathway, there is an excitatory pathway, that is will go to the globus pallidus internus. Remember here the difference between direct and indirect pathway. So direct pathway directly from putamen to globus pallidus internus, whereas here there is a station in the subthalamic nucleus. Okay, so indirect pathway from here putamen to globus pallidus externus, from globus pallidus externus to subthalamic nuclei, and from subthalamic nuclei glutaminergic fibers to globus pallidus internus. Now the rest of the pathway will be the similar, that is from this again that is globus pallidus internus, GABAergic fibers, it will go to the this one thalamus, ventroanterior and ventrolateral nucleus of the thalamus, that is again it is a GABAergic fibers, and here again it will go to the glutamatic fibers to the motor cortex or the cerebral cortex. Now as I said, direct pathway is an excitatory pathway, indirect pathway is an inhibitory pathway. Now let us try to understand with the help of this diagram how exactly this indirect pathway is an inhibitory. So again the same logic here. So when the motor cortex sends the signal to the basal ganglia to the striatum, that is caudate nucleus in putamen, the action potential in these neurons will be increased, right? Same like direct pathway. So here the glutamate neurotransmitter is released, then the next fibers which is going up to the globus pallidus externus is again also increased, but here the neurotransmitter here is GABA. So the next pathway here, that is from the globus pallidus externus to subthalamic nuclei, the action potential will be less here. Okay, because the neurotransmitter here is GABA. Again here at the subthalamus or subthalamic nuclei, so here when the action potential is less, means less amount of the GABA will be released, so there is a less inhibition, so the more amount of the action potential will reach the globus pallidus externus. Okay, now this is an excitatory neurotransmitter, here is glutamate, and then it will, the action potential in these fibers will be more, that is from the globus pallidus internus to the thalamus. Again in the thalamus, this is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So when there is a more amount of the inhibitory neurotransmitter, the action potential in these fibers will be less. So the ultimately it will cause us decreased discharge, and the decreased discharge reaches the cerebral cortex. So direct pathway is an excitatory pathway, whereas indirect pathway is an inhibitory pathway. Now we require both, because for a motor activity, for example, if I want to do particular action or a particular movement of a joint and the muscles, one group of muscles has to contract and the simultaneously other group of the muscles has to relax. Suppose I want to flex this elbow joint here, so you can see these biceps muscles are contracting and these triceps muscles are relaxing. So for that inhibition to be sent, it is for relaxation, the signal goes to the indirect pathway, and direct pathway will goes to the signal goes by the direct pathway. Okay, now this is direct and indirect pathway, both will be functioning together for the maintaining or the initiation of the voluntary movements. Okay, voluntary movements. So when this direct pathway is damaged, suppose if there is a damage to the direct pathway, it will causes hypokinesia, decrease in the movements, voluntary movements, or akinesia. Okay, whereas if there is a damage to the indirect pathway, we see the dyskinesia or overactivity of the movements. Okay, so in Parkinsonism we get hypokinesia where there is a problem with this direct pathway, whereas in Huntington disease or chorea we get problem here, or the lesions will be in the indirect pathway. That's why there is an dyskinesia or abnormal movements. Okay, we'll discuss in detail about that thing in the applied aspect, and when we correlate with this with the internal medicine in the next video, we'll discuss in detail about the Parkinsonism. So right now concentrate on the physiology. Hope the concept of direct and indirect pathway is clear. Now we have one more, third one is nigrostriatal pathway. Nigrostriatal pathway, as the name indicates, nigrostriatal pathway. Nigra means here substantia nigra. From substantia nigra, pars compacta to stratum. Stratum means here caudate nucleus and putamen here. So for direct pathway, it will give connections. So this is nigrostriatal pathway, connection to the direct pathway here, and the stratum, it will release dopamine. This is dopaminergic neurons in substantia nigra here. So it will bind to the D1 receptors here on the direct pathway. Similarly, this will give connection to the indirect pathway also, but the the receptor in the indirect pathway is D2. So this nigrostriatal pathway, one more pathway apart from direct and indirect. So this nigrostriatal pathway will stimulate the D1 receptors and inhibit the D2 receptors. That is, it will stimulate the direct pathway and it will inhibit the indirect pathway. Okay, so it will stimulate the direct pathway via D1 receptors and it will inhibit the indirect pathway by the D2 receptors. So we will discuss in Parkinson's. This is what happens is this pars compacta of the substantia nigra, there is neurodegeneration will take place, and due to that neurodegeneration of the neurons of this pars compacta, dopaminergic neurons of the pars compacta, now this signal will be decreased here. So it has a synergistic activity. So in direct pathway, so it will reduces, that will causes the hypokinesia of the movements. Okay, then this one it will help in maintaining the muscle tone and all. We'll discuss in the function. So this is about the connections of the basal ganglia. Hope it is clear. And we have given as I already mentioned you, we have given the PDF also. Now coming to the functions of the basal ganglia, we have discussed what are the components of the basal ganglia, we have discussed what are the neuronal circuits or pathway or connections of the basal ganglia. Now coming to the functions of the basal ganglia, as I already said, it helps in maintaining or initiation of the movement, stopping of the movements and modulating the movement. That is, it helps in the voluntary motor activity. So in how it helps in voluntary motor activity, so it has a it helps in cognitive motor activity. That is, before the action takes place, there is electrical activity seen in the basal ganglia, that is the cognitive motor activity is seen. Also it helps in planning and programming of the movements, and it helps in timing and scaling of the movements. Timing and scaling of the movement means how fast the activity should be done. Now suppose I want to raise my hand, how fast I should raise it, like this or slowly like this. That is timing of the movements. And scaling of the intensity of the movement, that is how far I should go, so much far or just here. So timing and scaling of the intensity of the movements. Also basal ganglia help in for our subconscious movements. Okay, for example, while walking we subconsciously we swing our arms like this, okay? That is subconscious movements is again it is due to this basal ganglia. Or suppose while we are driving a car, okay, while we are driving a car, our lower limbs will be like pressing the clutch, brake, or accelerator. So it will be planned now, it will be stored in this basal ganglia, so that you while driving you will be doing some other things or watching outside, but your subconsciously your lower limbs will be pressing the clutch or brake whenever required. That subconscious activities, again it is done by this basal ganglia, okay? So mainly it is involved in voluntary motor activity. Then it helps in maintaining the reflexes, it will inhibit mainly the spinal reflexes. Then it helps in maintaining the muscle tone. So the lesion of this basal ganglia causes the lead pipe rigidity, typically we seen in Parkinson's disease, lead pipe rigidity. So how exactly means, see a corticospinal tract. So corticospinal tract will not go directly to cortico-reticular tract and reticulospinal tract, okay? So now this corticospinal tract has inhibitory influence on the reticulospinal tract. So when this is disturbed, then obviously the cortical signal is not released, so the cortico-reticular tract will get less signal and the inhibition is lost. Then the reticulospinal tract will fire like thing, and it will increases the gamma motor neuron discharge, and it will causes the increase in the muscle tone, and when the muscle tone is increased, causes rigidity, and typically as if you are feeling it as a like a lead pipe rigidity, okay? We have discussed about one more type of rigidity, that is clasp type, that is spasticity in the upper motor neuron lesions. So please refer to my previous video to know about that, okay? Then rigidity occurs, and in Parkinson's disease typically you get the hypokinesia, that is decrease in the movements, like a person will be finding it very much difficult to walk, okay? That initiation, they will take a very small steps and the movements are very slow, even the face will appear like a mask shaped, okay, because expressionless face because of the decreased voluntary movements, okay? Now again it has a triad of rigidity, tremors, and akinesia or hypokinesia along with the postural instability. Then we have a resting tremor seen in Parkinson's disease. Again we'll discuss about that because of the here mainly this loss of this dopaminergic neurons, because there is a balance between the dopamine and the acetylcholine. Here again in this pathway, these neurons, as I said you, this dopaminergic neurons will stimulate this direct pathway and inhibit this indirect pathway. Again there is one more group of neurotransmitters which are controlling this, is acetylcholine. So whenever this imbalance between dopamine and acetylcholine, then again it will leads to the imbalance of the reverberating circuits, which leads to the resting tremors, typically what we see in Parkinson's disease, okay? So this is how it helps in maintaining the motor activity, maintaining the reflex activity, maintaining the muscle tone. Finally, it is also helps in arousal mechanism, okay? Lesion of this causes sleep and drowsiness, okay? Globus pallidus and red nucleus has close association with the reticular formation. Okay, so that are the functions of the basal ganglia. So in our next video we'll discuss about the disorders of the basal ganglia, more particularly about the Parkinson's disease. So please subscribe our channel and share it with your friends. Thank you very much.